From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy-watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya, tonight we're talking about GantzO 2016. It's a sci-fi anime manga, or based on manga comic book, which sets the story of a teenager brutally murdered on a subway station, and then he sort of awakens into this horrific computer game thing that is full of monsters. And before I get into those awesome details, we better warn people.
Warning. If you haven't seen this movie, turn back now.
Definitely turn back.
And then tune back in. Like, that's the whole point.
Yes, come back. Please come back. Let us know what you think about GantzO and what we're going to say about it. So what was your number one takeaway from GantzO, Surrey?
It is that 23-year-olds being interested in having a proper relationship with a 17-year-old is appropriate.
Yeah, sure.
Also,
he is the hero, but
also computer animated boobs.
Yes.
This is Japanese.
It is Japanese. And it's manga. It's based on manga, so the boobs are big and the asses are tight and the suits are lycra.
Bounce.
They do bounce, don't they? They bounce a lot. I know you liked that.
I think it must be... I didn't want to think about the discomfort of not being able to wear a sports bra whilst, killing monsters.
Yeah, and in tight, lycra suit things, whatever they were.
To be fair, the boys were jacked too.
They were jacked too, and they were wearing just as tight suits. So yeah,
they could have done bigger crotches. They're they're sort of a little bit modest. Not like ballet dancers. You're the male ballet dancers with.
You get to see everything, don't you, Sarah? You like that. You like that. You like to see everything in the suit.
It's important to be able to compare and contrast.
It's true. It's true. Culturally, art form on offer here in this Japanese story.
Something's on offer. It's your decision as to what it is. Okay, so that ends that awkward conversation.
It does.
And I have to ask you, what do you think? A hope, warning, or an experiment?
I reckon hope, and I'm going for that because our main character, Katu, that's right, isn't it? Katu, I'm pretty sure. Kata or Katu, I don't know, something like that. Kato.
Yeah, that's got one of those in cat.
Yeah, he's a cat. He's got long hair. His old journey is kind of... the reason why I'm saying hope is because his whole protagonist journey is sort of like he keeps saving everyone else, and we have warned everyone about what happens in the spoiler warning. So it's like, his whole journey, at the start he's saving his brother, he's there for his brother. He also then tries to save, the old man on the subway, which leads to him being brutally murdered. And then he's in the game, and although he's only a 17-year-old teenager with no experience of this kind of horrific, violent world, he's just he kind of has to save the day. It's a primal urge of this guy to save the day and save others. And then we learn later in the film that, in fact, he has already been in the game previously and saved others previously. So he's never changed. He's just that's the way he is. And it's very inspiring then for the other characters. They should follow it. So that's why I see it as hope that even in this nasty, violent world that they set up in this story, that there would be a guy like this that's just willing to just keep saving people.
Yeah, so I'm going to go
a lot of hope.
I reckon hope as well, because I thought that throughout the whole thing that Kato and that woman, Reiki,
Reiki. I wrote her name down. I didn't. It's. We're going to get the pronunciation terribly wrong tonight, and we're just going to probably be calling people woman and man.
Yes, the
I can't even pronounce Katu right, so you know. She comes in Anzu.
Anzu, eh?
Yeah, that's what I think it is. I hope.
Let's call her that. Okay, now the Anzu is the 23-year-old woman with
Yes.
a 3-year-old son.
Yes.
So in case we've got the name entirely wrong, then you know who we're talking about,
Yes.
right? Because the other woman, Reika, was the actress
Actress.
in the hair commercial.
Yeah.
Yes.
A stunning, beautiful woman with really long hair.
But she must have died, obviously. But anyway,
Yeah.
throughout the struggle on, and people were pulling together more and more and getting behind the struggle. And by displaying this persistence, more people got infected by that persistence, that relentless pursuit of, hope.
Yeah.
That's why I think it was hope. I mean, it ends with largely a happy ending anyway, but that's not really, I don't think that's what makes it hopeful, because you can have experiments and warnings which end with a happy ending,
Of
but
course.
they don't talk about hope. That's my reasoning for hope.
Yeah, fair enough. And I was just thinking as well, like even the other characters, they kind of, like Anzu and Reika and the old man, he, like all of them, they kind of like don't want to save the day, but then because of Katu, they sort of want to. They sort
keep
of
trying
learn
to
that.
hide, and then in the end they start coming out.
Yeah, because he's leading that path. So I think that's a lot of hope anyway.
Yes.
So what about yourself in the sci-fi world? Have you been doing anything with your writing?
Yeah, so I've gone back to the office for 3 days this week, which was exciting. So the other week I went and scouted out a workspace, because I've been less productive creatively since working from home.
Yep.
Ironically, which is sort of, you'd think otherwise, but I think I was lacking a separation of, okay, now I'm no longer preparing breakfast and doing dishes and stuff. I'm now creating. When I'm not, getting on the train and having that break, I'm sort of just melding from there into work, and it's not done much. So I've done a couple of things. I pulled my finger out. I've got back on this computer game that I was writing.
Yep.
That's nice. And going back to work in the mornings, I've powered on this sort of, I want to call it an alternate universe sci-fi story.
Lovely.
So I'm hoping to get that first draft finished in a week or so.
Yep.
And then I was going to get it through some editing and things.
Was that first day back on the train, you were just like, shit, yeah, I'm writing out a whole novel in an hour?
Yeah, I powered through that. Like got out about 1,000 words or so.
Yeah, awesome.
So that's quite good.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I've been doing. That's fine. I'm back to working from home tomorrow and all next week.
Yeah.
Because we're not completely out of lockdown processes.
No. Yes.
And frankly, I do enjoy working from home far more. I like the breaks on the train to be creative.
Yeah.
But I would quite also happily go to this working space. I'm going to get myself some hours there, and then 2 or 3 days each week I'll head out there, and after the morning shipping off of the kids.
Nice.
Spend a little bit of time just doing that. Yeah. And yourself, I saw you got business cards.
I got business cards finally, so that's exciting. Try not to be too perfectionist about it and just get them done, So I've got a project I'm going to start in the next couple of weeks, and it's something that it's not science fiction related, but I feel like I want business cards for that project, because I'm going to be approaching some random people, and I just want to kind of be able to introduce myself and look a little bit semi-profesh. And
just tuck your shirt in and do your fly up. You'll be okay.
Yeah, that's right. So even yesterday, I'm doing this other film for my wife. I'm helping her, so I'm doing some of the filming. And I was filming out the front of a shop, and a couple of people walked by and said hello and gave me the long stare, which you get sometimes in public when you got your camera, and you don't just look like you're filming kids or whatever. You're actually filming professionally. And I thought, I should have had my business cards, because like someone quite often comes up and goes, what are you up to? What are you doing here? You know, so it's good to be like, oh no, yeah, I'm a filmmaker, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so that's exciting. And that's what I've been doing, is doing a lot of filming. So unfortunately, a little bit like yourself, the writing's been on a bit of a back burner because I've been at home and not having that train time. But then I've been creative because I've been doing this filming for Tanya. Cool. But I've also got this other idea sort of bubbling away. So probably as she is about to just get the finishing touches on her film, then I'll be like, my turn.
Yes.
So that will probably start next week, hopefully, in terms of just planning and things like that. And then, yeah, a couple of weeks later, hopefully get out there and film and do those kind of things. Yeah.
Actually, speaking of films, I am making a little animation of our intro music. Yeah, the little intro, from a
Excellent.
distant galaxy they come, two brains pulsing strange energy. So I'm doing a little animation. I've got
Awesome.
Got the Starfield effect. Got these brains sort of sweeping in and pulsing with a strange energy. Gonna do a couple of cuts here and there, and then they'll be flying around the space.
Terrific.
To the music.
Yes.
That'll be something we can whack up there on Instagram as a bit of intro.
Yeah, definitely.
Something funny.
Cool. That sounds great.
I'm hoping to do a few more of these sorts of things. Just trying it out. But one of the things, of course, I've got to get a better computer. I've found that it chugs a little bit on the graphics. Just normal video editing, not a problem. But as soon as I start using this, I got this. Is it like graphics fusion effect stuff where you can throw in particle emitters and 3D animations, and you can start animating visual effects, coloration changes, that sort of thing. That's just ground to a halt.
All comes down to like your RAM and your graphics card, doesn't it? And how much it can handle.
I've got an aging laptop. It's a gaming laptop, so you go back five or so years. It was pretty well spec'd, but it's 5 or 6 years of laptop aging versus 5 or 6 years of video editing software upgrades, and suddenly, it's chugging down. Yeah, but it's okay. As soon as I get things settled, I've got permission to fork out a whole stack of cash on a new computer.
So I'm glad you scanned my brain and put it finally in the digital realm, and then it's going to be bouncing around some stars. It's pretty exciting. I'm sure our audience will love to see that when we get to launch that. So we should jump into GantzO 2016. As we said, it's available on Netflix. It's anime, science fiction, manga, based on a manga comic book or manga.
It is indeed.
I've got to say, I've seen some manga. I've read some manga many moons ago when I probably was a teenage boy, and I've seen some anime and a couple of films over time, but it's been a long time since I've actually sat down and run one through. And it just, like, from the outset, this film really did grab me in a really great way. So like you said, the boobs, it wasn't the boobs. It was just that I was like, oh, wow, this is like really intense computer animation. I guess being a dad of little kids, where you do watch a lot of kind of kids cartoon and animation, and we all realize, like, you do watch a Pixar movie and you go, wow, this is a good, high quality animation. That's what this did to me as well. Like, it grabbed my attention really well. Like, the animation just was like, bam, in your face. The way it was being cut together, the angles, the textures, the flow, the speed. It was really like grabbing me.
And I think they got a great balance with realistic rendering and computer look.
Yeah.
Because one of the problems, I remember there was the Final Fantasy movie, the Spirits Within?
Yes, yeah.
And that was a little bit trying too close to be real.
Yep.
And it gave you that uncanny valley effect where it kind of looked a bit, there was something not right. You couldn't quite appreciate it properly, the look of it. This one here, they pulled back a little bit from that, so it looks quite realistic, the lighting and a lot of the glinting and reflections and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But they pulled it back just a little bit, so the skin isn't trying to be all pores and freckles, and it's
that's right.
It's a little bit more like computerized, and I think the fact that it was sort of presented, they kept talking about they weren't really in a computer game, but they were in a situation that was referred to as a game because that's the best analogy. And so that kind of, it all played in that it did look a bit like they were playing a computer game, and And even some of the way they presented some of the scenes was somewhat Japanese computer game like.
Yeah.
So, which I'll mention those as we come along.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
So look, I'm going to do some bad pronunciation here. We've got Gantz is directed by Yasushi Kawamura and Keiichi Sato. I've got my sister-in-law is Japanese. I should have got her to tell me how to pronounce these. And it was written, the guy that created the manga comic book, which I'm sure there's some people out there, we might be on a Reddit page after this, sorry.
Yes.
But Hiroya Oku, he is...
Hiroya Oku.
Oh, you can do it a lot better. Why am I pronouncing this?
I did study Japanese for a couple of years and went over there.
You're letting me make these...
to stay for a little while because I was so enamored of their animation, basically.
And the screenplay itself, why don't you have a go at that one then? Sorry, hey, come on.
Now, here we go. Which one's the screenplay? Tsutomu. Now I'm on the spot.
Yeah. Now it's
Kuroiwa.
like in my brain.
Kuroiwa. Yeah.
Beautiful. So that was a screenplay. So, and apparently the actual manga is pretty well known in Japanese culture and in manga culture around the world. Again, you can probably sound like you can hear that I don't really know much about the culture.
Yeah.
But, just in what I went into this movie cold, as we always did, very hopeful, very positive, as we always do as Space Brains. And I enjoyed the whole process. And then afterwards, kind of just, Googling, looking into it, going, okay, this guy's known. He's got credentials. He's been around. Also, this actual story, I think it's 2000 or 2001 that the comic book actually was out and about. So it's kind of a bit older. And it's gone through a couple of different creative projects over the years. And there's a TV show or series that's around at the moment, I think, is it? Or is
it's on Netflix, but it's I don't know if it's
been out there before. So it's obviously something that is quite popular. And he's also quite popular in the manga scene, is what I could gather. So it was an interesting one. Obviously, totally digital. And there's a Japanese cast and a English cast, American cast, whatever you want to call it. But there's the both versions. So we are opening up the film with a beautiful, dark, enlightening aerial shot of Tokyo in some kind of ruins. There's flames,
stuff
falling around, burning,
broken boxes, smashed car.
Yeah, there's people are fleeing and screaming in huge crowds. I kind of really liked that. It sort of felt like something like Independence Day, those kind of 2012, those things, the end of the world, apocalypse kind of styled things. And then there's this massive kind of alien, weird monster creature that's like picking up a car and throwing it across downtown Tokyo.
Yeah, it's I found it odd that he was wearing pants. And just like jeans, I think, and boots.
Yeah, ripped jeans.
Jeans and boots. And so I was immediately wondering, are people turning... Did someone turn into
like
that?
a mutant or something?
Because it looked like he was, some dude had suddenly gone berserk, but no.
And we've got this young, fit woman who's lying sort of passed out on the ground, who's kind of coming to. It's what we said before. She's in this really tight Lycra suit.
Yeah, it's like blue light disc things on her.
Yeah.
And very cool.
Very cool, actually. And she's kind of gathering herself, and the creature sees her. So she like kind of hops up and flees. She starts running, and he picks up a car and throws it at her. Quite violently, and it's about to kind of hit her as she's running away from it when this then drone flying car thing comes in and kind of like, dismantles the car.
We'd seen little cuts to this.
Yeah.
Like leading up to this, where it's a sort of little, like
snippets.
a little flash of like some spinning, something, you don't know what any of that is. But then this is where it sort of all comes to...
It does.
Comes to fore, and it comes shooting through and knocks it through. Some dude in the back's got a sword or something.
Yeah. They look like hardcore futuristic warriors. That's what I was
and he's like jumps off the back of the car with his sword, and they start having a bit of
there's
a fight.
That sort of epic. I just got to make a note of that because there's that epic, like he jumps off and it's like, it's normal motion, and there's kind of like a few seconds of slow motion, and then he like lands. You know what I mean? And then it's fighting time, and it's normal speed. Like it's,
so it's just that they filmed this with an Android, Galaxy S9 on slow mo.
On slow mo, that just decides when things slow down. So, You can see the trend there. We'll come back to that later because I know that's one of the trends of anime manga. Yeah, and the dude hops off and he starts battling the monster, but he gets his ass kicked, doesn't he? He's getting picked up and thrown down pretty hard.
He does get a literal hard kicking. Oh, and then he goes swings with his sword and the thing like kicks the sword in half and breaks.
Yep.
And he's looking pretty, like the human guy is looking a bit worse for wear, and his suit bleeds out this little black goop.
Yeah, goop, yeah, and it kind of powers down.
Yeah, that's kind of, and the woman, she says, no, let's run, you'll die. And what is it? He says, what? But I have to try.
Yeah. I have to try to take it on. Yeah.
It's like, it's a very, it strikes me as a very Japanese, or at least a very anime statement of like certain doom, and he's like, goes, no, but I have to try.
Yeah. Well, it kind of reminded me of, not anime because that's not really my background, but it reminded me of like samurai culture. You know, like I've seen plenty of films where, you know, like the samurai, it's like they're up against 10 samurai and they're like the other, you know, the enemy is way stronger than them, and they're like, you know, it's basically that they sacrifice themselves. So they're like, they're realistically, they're there going, it's me against 10 dudes. No, but I have to try this. Like, it's my honor. It's all about honor, isn't it? It's like, you know, like someone else.
Maintaining the principle of, and we get more detail about this later on. He was thoroughly into saving people.
Yes.
That's quite nice.
So anyway, he runs off and she sort of doesn't want him to, but he attacks this big monster, but again, he's slammed into the earth, and he manages to fire off, sort of surprise the monster. He's actually got this like high-tech laser gun thing.
Yeah, these guns are weird.
They're like got round, they sort of light up. They don't fire a bullet or anything, but then all of a sudden there's like a vibration and their heads explode, isn't there?
Yeah, it's sort of like, they pull the trigger and there's a delay, and then there's like a when they miss, there's like a little blue boop.
Yeah.
And when they hit, there's just like they pull the trigger and this gun
there's nothing.
The gun doesn't go blam or anything like that. It just goes whoop.
Yeah.
And then there's silence for a moment, and then their head explodes.
It explodes.
So I know it's quite a creative sort of idea.
I liked it. It was really unexpected when you first see it, and then you see it again. And then later they got the gun that's like, as they fire it, I don't know, this massive pounding laser thing is coming out of the sky.
Force thing drops out of the sky.
And it's like dropping on the creatures as they, I don't know, it's bizarre, isn't it? But it's like awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of part of that computer game thing. If you play your Final Fantasy type role-playing games on the computers, they'll have an effect that someone will do, and it'll be like just a force will appear out of nowhere sort of thing and do something.
Actually, that's a really good way to do it. It's a force that appears out of nowhere.
Yeah. Always
Space Force.
Always off screen. It just comes in off screen.
It just comes in off screen. Like, that's the thing. So it's like, but anyway, it's the way it works, sorry. He manages to blow that monster's head off, but he dies.
Yeah. He's left there on his knees or something or other,
and then she is kind of weeping over his dead body, and then she starts to, I don't think pixelating is the right word, but it's like almost like an old laser printer wiping off a centimetre of a time of her body.
Well, it reminded me of those 3D MRI, fMRI scans where you get sliced through.
Yeah.
And so it sort of looked like that, like it was just dissolving her. Like,
I'm an 80s kid, so I thought laser printer, okay? Laser printer.
Something along those lines, yeah. It's a very cool effect.
It was really cool.
And in the background, you can see her comrades, just like their shoes just finally disappearing.
Yeah. So from there, we have then a man and a woman characters are shopping downtown, like in another city, I presumed. And they're sort of noticing on their mobile phones, and there's like those big big advertising screens in the city that they're walking down, that there's a state of emergency in Osaka.
Yes.
Did I pronounce that right? Oh, thank God. You're the Japanese.
Osaka.
Yeah. You're the Japanese control level tonight. Sorry, so make sure that I'm correct on all of this.
Funny thing is, when I was last in Osaka,
you're ahead of me. I've never been.
With my friend, and he obviously spoke no Japanese, and I studied for a couple of years and done a few things. I'm terrible. I am terrible at Japanese, but I was the one then became responsible for all the navigating. I'd sit there just sounding out the names of the shops and streets and all the rest of it, and have to go and try and order food. And oh my goodness me, Osaka was where we were. Order the first thing, there was some ramen, and the peculiarity of the Japanese language is that the word no is ie. Okay, that's massively overpronouncing it. But more casually when you're speaking, it's yeah. So the lady, she asked me if I'd like egg, tomogo ga, and I went, yeah. And so I didn't get it. And so I was eating my ramen, and I was going, oh, where's the egg? I said, yeah. I said, yeah. So there's your little lesson. Don't say yeah for yes.
No. That is a good little lesson. See, not only learning about films here, we are learning about Japanese pronunciation. Okay.
I was there to see Iron Maiden, in case you wanted.
Then we have this youngish man who's on the subway, and he rings his son.
Well, we think it's...
Well, yeah. I thought it was his son.
I thought it was his son.
That's how I was interpreting it. Because to me, this guy looked like a young man. Later, it reveals he's 17. But to me, he looked like in his 20s because he was all in a bit of a suit and stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just, at this point in time, you don't know. But he's on the subway. I thought he was ringing his son. And they kind of have an awkward conversation about him not getting home in time, and you can tell that.
Yeah, do you remember it's my birthday?
Do you remember it's like, without saying it, he's saying, "Do you remember that today's a special night?" And he kind of pretends he has forgotten, but he's holding this bag. And suddenly there's like screaming and yelling on the subway. People are saying he's got a knife, and he kind of turns this young guy. And he holds for a second or two, but then he goes to help. And there's this old man, he's covered in blood, and he, tries to sort of help him a bit. And all of a sudden, this, gangster kind of looking dude comes around.
He looked a little bit, I would say he was suffering a mental health issue.
Yeah, it looked like
because he's sort of staggering from side to side.
Yeah,
he's got this big knife in each hand, and it wasn't in his right frame of mind. And
he tries to help the old man, but of course he's sort of put in a vulnerable position, and this guy just stabs
throws him up against the wall, gives him a few stabs. And we see that from a security camera, which is an interesting viewpoint because you immediately get the feeling that somebody's watching.
You do. And it's also just cool because then it's not... It's violent as anything, but it's also a bit removed.
Yeah, because there's a... Was it black and white? I think
it
was
black and white. And it's a bit grainy. It's like more of a shape of a person.
Yeah, it was a security camera watching it.
Yeah. And then there's a really close-up, full-colour shot of a bloodied, crushed birthday cake.
Yeah, that's so sad.
That's nice. So all of a sudden, bam, he wakes up. He's fine, but he's confused as all fuck in this room with the woman from the start in her hot, sexy lycra blue light suit, whatever you want to call it.
An older man.
And it's
also
nice.
In a sexy tight lycra
He's
suit.
also in a tight suit, yes, for those. They catered for everyone, and that's what manga does, I think. And the other thing is she looks a bit familiar. That's the thing. She's kind of a little bit familiar looking because we did see her in the ads when they were doing the state of emergencies. But it's not quite lined up like that easily, but there is a bit of a familiarity to her. They start explaining, he's obviously questioning everything, and they explain that her name is Reika and she was in an accident. She used to be an actress. She's like, well, who cares about that now? So there's an old, and then there's a younger man as well.
Yeah, like a teenage smart ass.
See, to me, he seemed like a teenager, where Kato didn't really seem like a teenager.
No, he was a bit... a strange choice making him 17.
I think so, but...
I think that has to do with the target audience of
probably.
The anime. Because it's not... If it's targeted at middle-aged men, it's middle-aged men with childhood fantasies of being the superhero with a sword.
It is.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're in this. There's also this huge black orb So there's a teenage guy, and there's another sort of
Grumpy dude?
grumpy Italian guy. Like, he really wasn't Japanese to me.
American? I think he's just meant to be generically American.
I think so. So he's, I don't know, like New Yorker, I think. New Yorker.
He's a New Yorker.
He's a New Yorker, so he's grumpy, he's asshole.
This is us talking like New Yorkers.
That's right. We're assholes, that kind of idea. We like to pick on other people, Japanese people.
So and
that's what this guy does, isn't he? He's a bit of an asshole.
And you can tell we don't have any listeners in New York. So
no.
if you are in New York listening to us,
let us know that you're not an asshole.
Feel free to correct us on our accents.
Yes. So anyway, and I really liked this. It starts singing what I would call a Japanese TV jingle. That's how that kind of came across to me. Like it reminded me of, we've spoken about it previously, but like something like Lost and the old fashioned kind of nostalgic, going back to a different time, which is a cool little. It's a cool little attention to detail, because it's like you could have it come in like doom doom, be really futuristic. But for it to play like an old jingle, it's just, we had it in Demolition Man, didn't we? With the idea of like in the future they like old jingles, and it's the old radio station jingles.
It was also an alienness to it, because it didn't seem appropriate. There's this intimidating black orb sitting there, which is clearly of some importance.
Yes,
and then it just starts like writing stuff up on a surface, and it's got this weird little voice. Oh, you're going to have to kill this next monster in 2 hours. And like the little ding, 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 ding noises. And it's just, you totally knew that was not a human construction.
No, and it makes it feel unsafe, doesn't it? It's like there's a real kind of like,
it's too weird.
This is really alien to us, so it makes sense. The American, he's not happy about it at all. It's explained, the old man explains to them that they're in like an endless survival game, because this orb has sort of flashed up this old man, like an image of an old man. That's who they must kill to end the game. And the American's not happy, so he sort of picks up his suit, tries to smash the window. He's not happy.
I do what I want.
I'm a New Yorker.
I don't get cheeseburger. Like Christopher Walken. Something.
Yeah, some stereotypes there, like we're doing right now. So anyway, the young teenage boy surprises them all by kind of threatening him, and he threatens back, and he just blows his head off with that blue gun, And it wasn't lovely that they like made it that the blood of the American that's just been exploded over the room, it's like dripping.
It's quite gruesome.
Like it's on everything and it's just dripping off the ceiling. Like I appreciated that. I liked that. They also say that they've had stronger leaders in the past, but last mission they lost them. So that's kind of referring back to what that opening was all about, wasn't it? That obviously, that leader that went in, he was, a tough guy that kept them together, whereas now they're kind of a bit like, we're the leftovers.
And then the timer starts.
Yes.
And then suddenly Suzuki, the old guy, and Reika start urging Kato to get his suit on. Get it on. Kato's still going, I'm not sure what it is going on or what I'm doing. And it says, oh, for goodness sakes, just get it on. And so he pulls it on in time, and then he gets dissolved by this blue thing. And we see from his point of view then that he's looking in the reflection of the window, and you can see his middle section is gone, and it started from the top of his head down. And as it passes his eyes, the screen, as it passes down, goes to a new view.
Yes.
Which I thought was quite good. So it's
cool.
like as that part of his eye was simultaneously, here and there, and it was all connected. Very, very well done there.
So in this new world, they're a bit unsure where they are, but then they are in Osaka. And, again, it's a world that's kind of, people are screeching and screaming, and there's sounds like there's destruction in the distance. And so they've been flung into this war, really. The four of them are there, and they've got the others sort of have their guns ready, whereas Kato is very he's disorientated. He doesn't really get what's going on.
I really got the feeling of Keanu Reeves in The Matrix.
Yes, there's a similar
He
thing.
even had
wasn't
a
it?
similar way of moving.
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
And hair and
Yeah.
I don't know. I got that same sort of vibe
Yeah, I could
of
see that,
Matrix, Keanu, the Neo, I suppose. Yeah, he's sort of moving about, looking. He's going and not sure what's going on. It's quite good.
Whereas, you have the young guy who's all confident. You have the old man going, oh, are we going to all die?
Yeah.
And Reiko kind of, again, just sort of a bit protective of everything. So they were not a very... You didn't have a lot of faith that in this world they were going to succeed, did you? They didn't seem that they were going to go anywhere.
And while they're looking around, Reiko, she opens up a little wrist motion tracker thingo.
Yep.
Because they're wondering what the monsters, they're going to have to fight monsters. And there's a blip on it.
Yeah, and it's coming
and they
towards
watch, and then they see this, kind of like a
person coming to
geisha
them.
dressed woman in traditional clothes on those funny little sandally clog things, but her face is all like blank with a big open mouth, and she's walking, like a zombie, like badly.
Yeah, towards them.
And they pull out their guns and they're sort of shooting, and they're all out of range. And Nishi just says, "Oh, you idiots!" He's the young teenage kid. He calls everyone idiots. You idiots! She's out of range, and their guns run out, and he just stands there and waits and waits and
Till
waits.
this creature gets really
Till
close.
finally his little gun registers, ding, in range, like this little blue line, and she crosses over it, lights up, boom, pulls the trigger, and it literally just goes boop. And the end opens. There's no beam. There's no flash.
That's right. Like
you don't even know that it's actually fired.
Yeah, that's right.
And
she keeps coming.
And
that's
you think,
thing.
what an ineffectual weapon. Yeah. And then she.
And but it's like she's right on top of Kato, isn't she? Yeah. And just her head explodes.
her head goes up like
a
melon hit by a futuristic gun that doesn't shoot. Something like that.
Yeah. And so Kato's still confused as anything, and the older man says, "We must kill all the targets in the allotted time, or humanity will cease to exist." Which was very then I was like, wow, how have you come to this conclusion? Yeah, that sounds like really hardcore, doesn't it?
Well, that's the same thing. You mentioned Lost before, and it's the same thing. You got to keep pressing the button.
Yeah.
And how do you know that's going to happen? Because I guess the problem is do you want to find out the hard way?
That's right.
Because we've got to defeat them all of humanity. How do you know all of humanity?
Yeah, how do you know? I was in humanity last week, and we weren't dying then. Yeah. And you guys have been fighting for a while, right?
Well, I mean, the monsters were news reports.
Yeah.
But,
they're not everywhere.
They didn't seem to be terribly concerned.
Osaka, who cares? Seal off the city. Run for your life.
Yeah, I think they'd kind of come to expect that this happens from time to time.
They realise they're in Osaka and not Tokyo, whereas last time they were. So there's like a change. They're the Tokyo team, whereas now they're here. And this is a bit I really like, and I'll come back to it, I think, a bit later. But the tracker then senses not only a creature, but then lots of them. And they kind of quickly hide next to these cars. Yeah. And it's a bridge in the city. Yeah,
and the monsters are down below the bridge.
And then they sort of start coming up over the bridge.
Oh, this is such a good scene.
I loved it. It's a favourite for me. And the other thing was these monsters were like, for me, it was like they were when the wild things are. Yes. Where the wild things are. They had, some of them had those big heads, and some of them had weird arms, and they were like, the face was an eagle, but the body is, I don't know, a cow.
They're sort of caricatures.
Yeah, they would look really weird, but then they were also scary,
Well, see, I recognise a couple of them from Japanese folklore.
Yes,
there was one of them scampering along that looked a bit like a turtley, and it was holding a little cap on its head.
Yeah.
And that is, what do you call it? Like a kappa.
Yeah.
Which is a little turtle thing. But it has a little dish in its head which has water, and it often keeps a lid over it, because if it spills that water, it dies.
Right.
And so it was going along holding a little cap over its dish. On its head.
It's a very vulnerable monster.
And a lot of the other monsters, also had that folk tale-ish, fairy tale-ish kind of look.
Yeah, fairy tale.
But they weren't. Because we do that in movies a lot. Hollywood will famously pick a monster that gets displayed, but then they'll really monsterize it.
Yes.
Whereas you look at the classical picture of a wicked gnome and it's kind of almost comical.
Yes.
But then Hollywood will monsterize it.
Yeah.
This was the other way around. They sort of the fairy tale sort of picture, which looks a bit comical, they then gone and exaggerated it. And but they looked quite realistic because the rendering style of this animation.
Well, that's right. Yeah, they looked as real as the people. So it's kind of like, they're
it didn't
there.
look like cartoons, not like Monsters Inc. or something like that. They looked like real monsters.
And then there's this awesome, huge head.
Something is coming up. Something big is coming up over behind them because they've been hiding behind the car, and then something's come the other side, and there's a lot of hair, and it comes up and you see the eyes and a big face, and you go, holy crap, it's like a big ogre thing.
Yeah.
No, just the head.
Just the head.
Yeah, and it rolled. It would have been comical if not for the fact that it was so terrifying.
Yeah, I know.
His head was rolling.
I know. And they sort of like, they just run and they take cover. And that's when this other awesome Osaka team rock up. And they just start slashing these monsters down.
The big headed smashed Kato into the ground.
Yeah.
And that's where we learn that the suits sort of have a bit of a force field effect on them.
Yeah.
But they're not invulnerable because when he got hit, his suit kind of went scrunchy and the light dimmed a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it slowly came back on.
Yeah, it protects the body.
So there is
that was limits. A nice little touch, wasn't it? Because their head was like rolling around. You're like, well, yeah, it's scary, but you probably could outrun it. You could probably hide in a building. It probably can't really get you. But just at that last moment, when he's like rolling, he's kind of running away from it, it just goes, ha! And it like just beamed up into the sky. It bounced up. And you're like, oh God, it's just going to come and squish him, which it does.
Big head.
It was a really funny kind of thing to it. But these Osaka guys rock up and they're hardcore military
and they've got those spinning blade things. Cycle thingos.
They've got like weapons that are way more powerful. And they're just confident as anything, aren't they? They're just
they're cowboys.
Here. They're cowboys, yeah. They own one of them's like one of the main guys. I wrote down that one was called George and the other one was called Mayo, I think, or Maru or something. I did write them down later when Anzu talks about them. But one of them, I can't remember which one it is now, but he's like just smoking. Like he doesn't care. That's how confident he is. Like there's all these monsters, he's just still smoking away.
Yeah, he's got the cigarette just dangling from his
mouth, and he's not really even taking them in. And there's a great bit there as well because they like fire on the monsters. They have their little fight thing, and then they also insult the ranker, don't they? They're like, "Hey, check out the tits on that one."
Oh,
in her suit.
Yeah, they weren't endearing themselves as opposed to Kato, who came along and immediately tries to rescue dude at the subway.
Yeah,
and then
tries to help people.
He tries to help them even in this initial bit, you know.
Yeah,
and these other guys turn up, but they're kind of shouting and loud and
and abusive to women. And like one of them he's like, I'm going to kill the monsters and then I'm going to come back and get you, you know, sort of like, so it's that real sort of arrogant kind of masculinity on display. And they do, and there's a great moment where they're, you know, brutalizing all these monsters that on her tracker where you could see all the yellow highlighted dots indicating monsters, they're all being annihilated, like they're all disappearing off her screen. But then there's a monster that kind of overpowers a few of them and kills them. And we get those two leaders, the cigarette guy, who then has to kind of, I guess I have to get rid of this one, you know. And it's like an eagle with a sword as a tail or something. I don't know, you know, like it just, and actually killed a couple of the soldiers. I don't know. The monsters here are just incredible. It was hard to keep up because they're all different. They're all so crazy, you know. Like it was a real sight for the eyes. Hey, like it really got my imagination going.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really loved about this was just all the wacky rank and file monsters were all over the shop. And then, and speaking of that, the monster then that Kato finds, he goes, I've got to go.
Yes.
And while Suzuki is like saying, no, let's just hide. Yeah. Let's just hide and wait.
They will take care of it.
Yeah. Wait till everyone else does everything.
Yeah.
And Kato's like, well, I'm not sure about that. So he sort of wanders off. And was that, when does he get the coins?
That's when it happened. The old man says to him, like, don't go. Suzuki says, don't go, let's hide. And and then he says, I've got to go, I've got to help people, you know. And And he goes, well, some of the phones still work, and he gives him coins.
Some coins, yeah. There's someone you got to call. He also explains too about the 100 points.
He does,
thing,
yeah.
Because, he says those guys, their weapons, it's just so much better. Like, they've got these little pew-pew guns, and these other guys have this sort of great, huge thing that makes this force drop out of the sky and smush things in all a splash of blood.
Yeah.
And that's when, and Nishi is going to she's going to shoot him.
Yeah.
Like, because Nishi is just a goiter, I think. And Suzuki jumps in and says, no, I'll explain to him. And he says, if they win 100 points, because they're somehow scored, that's not really explained how the scoring is. It's just, obviously, it's like a game, as you said. You get 100 points, you get a choice of 3 things. Better weapons, which is the obvious choice. Number 2 is resurrect a fallen team member. And number 3 is your freedom, which is you get your memory wiped and you're sent back out into the real world. And this is where Nishi... Is his name Nishi?
Look, we'll go with
Yes,
Nishi.
it is. It's Nishi. And I remember that because it's like she is 4 or death. And Ni is 2. I'm wearing with 2 death or 2 kills or I don't know whether there was some sort of meaning behind his name being short like. But anyway, he goes whatevs and he goes invisible and so disappears. He says, "I'm going to wait till the big guys come out."
Take care.
So he's obviously won a couple battles or at least one battle because he's got invisibility coat, like cloaking. So Kato goes off with his coins and he's sort of. I think at this stage he's still kind of a bit doesn't really know what he's meant to be doing.
Yeah.
And while he's there, he comes across Anzu, and she says, "What are you doing?" He's, "I'm trying to help people," and she just thinks he's joking. No, just stay back and just wait. They'll take care of it. And I found it was amazing that all of these people just go, no, just hide, just hide, just be small. Let those guys do it all. And he's like, I don't think I can. He's sort of going, okay. And they talk, and he explains that he's got his son, he's got a brother, and she's got a son. And it's like, so we can't die then. And he says, no, I can't, because his poor little brother, 10-year-old, is otherwise all by himself and goes to goodness knows where.
So they come across, she actually says, there's a family that need help. I'll take you to them. So she takes him to him, and there's this like old man, old woman. They're like, I really like that. The old woman's like, it's like, we're too old, don't worry about us, but you must save the boy.
Yes, you can let him kill us.
And the old man tries to, but this monster is huge. Like, it's really
another
big.
weirdo. There seems to be just like a head with arms and a tail that has
then
like
some sort of weird tail with a
weirdly
sharp,
overly biological functioning tail, which is again a very, very anime sort of.
And then also thing. We find out in this scene, like, it's put bodies into these little
pustules.
Holes in its back.
What the hell? Who comes up with this stuff?
I know. It's hilarious, isn't it? It's hilarious on one side and horrific on another. Like, I love that. I really loved. It got my imagination cranking, this movie.
Yeah,
it really sucks me in with that imagination. But he insists on fighting, and even she then just like leaves him to fight. And as she's walking away, she sort of realizes, I think this dude, I kind of, I've got some feelings for him.
He's actually
pretty
serious.
Cool. He's pretty serious. He's really going for it. You could tell he doesn't really know what he's doing. She goes back to kind of help him, but then she's picked up with that tail. This monster kind of grabs it with his tail, and her gun goes flying across. And it's more powerful, which indicates she has fought previously. Yeah, because she's kind of got a better gun, doesn't she?
It's unclear as to whether everyone just gets given those basic guns and they upgrade from there, or if her gun was of similar power but just a different variety
and it
that
suited the monster that then they were fighting. I don't know. So this thing kind of he gets a moment. He's whacked around a bit by the monster, and he's sort of like close calls on whether he's going to get killed. But then he fires this gun, and this gun, instead of the blue thing, it's like an old-fashioned wire that goes out and traps the monster, kind of wraps around it, bolts to the ground, but then it like slowly turns on and goes red and then it like you're thinking like again a bit like the head exploding. There's a delay. There's always a delay in these weapons, which is weird, isn't it? And then it like just literally starts chopping down, like tightening and just chopping the monster's head down,
like the blue teleporting away, but there's like red as the lines. It just dissolves away into where it's been wrapped up, until finally it chews through enough of the monster, and the monster falls down.
Dead, like.
And then he's like pulls Anzu out of the.
She's in
out
the
of this weird orifice. Like it's, I assume a little cap of scab forms over it later. Oh, it's just awful.
Yeah, and bit like Alien, isn't it? You know, there's like bolting it to the wall.
It's a bit like that.
The babies, I suppose, maybe something like that. And then we cut to, that's right, it's George and Mora was the names I got, with the two leader soldiers. And they're kind of scoping out that one of them's killing a monster, and you have this shot that right up on a tower, they notice they've noticed that there's this creepy guy right up on the tower. One of them says to the other, "Isn't that he's a bit little, but he's creepy?" And it's just this little ball man.
And there's that other eagle-winged, big
red-skinned demon sort of creature. So there's just a scene there between those two guys. Reiki and Suzuki are having a debate whether they should actually go and help people. They like to. That's all these two do, don't they? They just sit around and chat about whether they should help people. They're kind of the whole movie.
and that's why I think it was the hope, because initially they just go, "No, let's just back off and hide."
Yeah,
which to me didn't make sense. It made sense to kill as much as you were capable of killing, like all those first level critters, to give the best chance of the better fighters to not be worn out or get taken out by accident type of thing.
Or even like, you know, you've been given a gun that can kill them. The monsters, like even that first zombie lady, they didn't necessarily seem like the smartest monsters in the world. So maybe just stand there and start killing them as much as possible. And if you're a team, you could, I don't know. Anyway. So they're kind of debating when this massive ram head creature, like huge, as big as a big building, crab body thing, kind of like comes out of the river, I think, and sort of, stands up and it's as tall as a building. It's a very Godzilla kind of style.
You're thinking these little guns, they're pretty cool. They blew up heads.
Yeah, but they're not going to take down this thing.
No, they're not going to do that.
And then that's when out of the river came this massive futuristic robot thing.
Well, we'd been told about what's his name?
Laurie?
Oka.
Oka, that's it. Oka,
yes,
sorry.
Oka, who'd won 7 times.
Yes.
Because, George and Mora had been victorious 3 times or 4 times or something.
Yeah.
And this guy done 7 times. And we're told initially he just hides, like, cloaked until there's something worth killing.
Yes.
And we saw Nishi do that. So that's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But then this big blue glowing mecha, which looks like the suit's little blue glowing discs, except this thing was just covered with these things.
Yes,
It was a bit of an awkward looking machine.
It was,
It didn't look like a Gundam or one of these Robotech.
No, it looked still
thingos.
like it needed a bit of work, didn't it? To be a bit more fluid compared to a big ram demon crab creature.
It uncloaked and it stepped up out of the river.
Yep.
And started having a fisty fight with these. That's what they call it, fisty fight, isn't it?
Fisty fight, yeah.
So they started punching this thing up, and they're wrestling and crashing,
and then we have the soldiers, a group of soldiers, kind of appear and Taranka and Suzuki, and they and Katu comes back, and they're kind of the soldiers like guns pointing at, "Who are you? What are you doing here? You black suited people. Which side are you on?" And actually, Katu says, "Oh, we're part of GantzO."
Yeah.
But they're like, "Well, we don't know
what's Gantz. We don't know what that is.
Where's your? Where do you come from? Who's your boss? That kind of stuff."
Yeah, show us your badge.
Yeah. And this is where that winged demon creature that was up on the top of the building suddenly rocks up.
It lands on top of them.
Lands on 2 soldiers, splats them. Blood goes everywhere. The other soldiers start firing, but the bullets aren't really having any effect. And he then just starts picking them up, and he uses like one of the soldiers to like clobber another one, you know,
Yeah,
like just literally the whole body. So it kind of gives you an idea of how big this dude is, and all the soldiers are kind of like brutally murdered in that pretty quickly. And this monster turns to Katu and Ranka and that, and you're thinking, oh no, they're done for, aren't they?
That's what I thought.
And then the Osaka guys rock up.
Yeah, the two, George and Mildred, turn up.
And they're super confident about taking him down. You know, they've got that big gun.
Was it George? He just sort of goes, well, I guess I'm going to have to
fight him, you know. Yeah. Like, and so he goes and he I think at first he fights him a little bit hand on hand, but he gets whacked over. So then he pulls out that gun that brings in this force from out of the sky, and it pounds him into the earth, and blood just pools up like a big waterfall of blood. And he's like, ugh. But then this creature, he's lost his wings.
Yeah, but he gets back up again.
But he stands back up, and so he like fires again. He's pounded back down. There's more blood. But he gets back up again. He fires again. Bam, bam. And he just keeps firing. And it's kind of like every time he's firing, he's taking off a layer of skin, but he's not stopping him.
No.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. It was, this is the beginning of the boss fights.
Anyway, so he's sort of fighting him, and he's doing a weapon, and then this creature kind of roars against the force, I suppose, and manages to like
catches the force that drops down. He sort of holds up against it.
Yeah, he holds up against it, which was interesting. And flings it back and grabs Mora. Mora was the one that was fighting.
And he
starts crushing him, and he's like, I think, does he punch him or stab him or something? And then keeps firing, and then the monster's dead, basically. Like,
well, the thing is, it's like George is just sitting back watching.
Yeah, George is just kind of going, come on,
you can do it.
Yeah, it's taking too long. How long does it take? Yeah. Anyway, and then he's like, looks at Mora, and he's realised that he's actually died in the process. So
yes.
He has killed the monster, but he's also died himself. And the little creepy bald guy starts, walking towards them.
See, this is what I was starting to get out of this, is because I've played these Japanese role-playing games, and the way they tend to work is the two sides. It's like and Pokemon computer games as well. Yeah, the two sides line up, and then one of them will step forward and fight, and the others just stand by and watch until it's really just a turn-based sort of thing. Yeah. But you get this same effect of one comes forward and does whatever it can do, and everyone else is just standing there.
And I was like, wow, he's got that weapon, and
the same thing in this was like someone would fight a monster, and everyone else would stand back going, and I was sitting there just saying, it'd be a lot easier if you all shot.
Yeah, you all shot at the once. Like, surely that would have.
It's like you've got this. Mora is being grappled
but they get
with.
the 100 points. So I guess the thing is, we all shoot at once, who gets the 100
Well,
points?
see, I think it's playing off this computer game trope, because there's nothing to stop them. They all just shoot in there. And, I mean, George was even sitting there back watching, there just waiting. Yeah, I'll wait for you to do it. Yeah, you can do it. You've done it. And you sort of think, what? What? Why are you not doing this? And the number of times they just stood there looking at these monsters doing nothing. Yeah. And I realised that it was playing off that computer game concept where you can't act until it's your turn. Yes. And in this, everyone was waiting for their turn to act, which I found funny until the very end when finally Kato
That's it. He brings them all together, doesn't he? So this little creepy bald guy kind of comes plodding along.
And wasn't he creepy?
He was creepy. He's in his little sort of suit and that. And he did remind me of, I think he's probably come out of like, a little creepy old Japanese man, and his little...
He's got the big earlobes. Funny obi.
It's like he's naked underneath his robe, like it's sort of a little bit creepy. And he's like humming kind of thing, and he's muttering to himself. So he's like little creepy old Japanese man. And George kind of goes, oh... And because of the death of Morai, like he steps up, and George, we've known previously in the film, he's got his big samurai knife thing, and so he just slices him, in a really kind of cool, stylized, 1, 2, 3, 4 slashes that would, annihilate any creature you would imagine. And when he turns around, those 4 slices of one person just kind of blob into 4 versions of the little old man.
Yeah,
And you're like,
that's what I was thinking was this guy's power is going to be like, okay, you're not going to be
every
like that.
time you kill him, he multiplies, you know. And so then he starts to then they merge back. They merge back into the one. And then he starts fighting him with the sword. Everything he's throwing at him is not working. This guy is faster, he's dodgy, he's
He
quicker.
jumps up and jumps on top of the sword.
Jump on the sword when he's swinging it. And of course he's exhausted. I'm thinking, he's doing the old Muhammad Ali move, really, like, you know, dance like a butterfly, you know, like, you know, so it's like just kind of hover back, you know, and tire out your opponent, and then bam. And that's kind of what he does. But he's oh God, he like swallows it. He like, you know, at one point he's had enough, and then he swallows him by becoming naked women that are just multiplying, spewing forth.
Again, the creativity there is just like, who thought, you know what it's going to do? He's going to turn into this weird reproducing flesh monster of naked women.
Just constant. Like, so it's just like body parts and women, you know, just women pouring out, and it's suffocated him. You know, it's like he's disappeared inside these naked women.
And this turns into a giant naked woman made of naked women.
Naked women, yeah.
Its fingers are like the legs of
and
bodies,
hips,
that
and
form the hand. It's twisted stuff.
Yeah, it's very twisted stuff. And it spits George's head out.
Get rid of that.
So Kato must fight. He must fight. He must fight. And the others are telling him not to. But he does. And he sort of starts to win a little bit against this like womanly
shooting.
creature.
And it's dodging and flipping and turning and twisting. And finally,
and he kind of gets it.
Well, I think it gets distracted by the other guys.
The other guys, yeah.
And then he shoots in the back of the head and blows the head. Yeah. And they go, oh, okay. And then it bends over backwards. You think it's falling, but no, its arms come down and catch it. Yeah. And then it sort of morphs out again, and it keeps going.
So it kind of comes out and the head grows again, doesn't it? And this is where Nishu suddenly appears, you know, because he's been cloaked, and just blows the boob woman head monster thing apart.
Boob woman head monster.
It's just, I don't know how you describe these. How is it written in the script? You know, like, honestly.
Yeah. How did they describe that to the artist? So we want some idea renderings here. It's a boob woman head monster.
It's a woman made of naked women all over.
Especially boobs.
Oh,
I know just the thing.
Leave it with me. Thing, you know.
You do? Oh my God.
Yeah. You know, that's great. And, you know, it disintegrates into a bloodbath, and they're all kind of like, oh, you know, you did that. That's great. Then it starts the blood bubbling, and you're like, this thing's coming back.
Yeah, something's thrashing around.
And there's a bit of, spraying up, and this other creature bubbles out of the bloodbath. And in fact, the Nishu, he disappears very quickly when the bubbling's happening.
He backs off and disappears.
Yeah. But he's then suddenly reappears, and he's had his arm ripped off by this new monster, hasn't he?
Yeah.
It sort of all happened really rapidly at that moment.
I watched this just yesterday afternoon, so you'd think I really realised what's going on. But
he does, because he sees it bubbling, so he disappears, and then Kato and that watching, and this monster, the new monster, appears, and it kind of like viciously, I think, throws around, and suddenly Nishu's back, and he's lost his arm.
Yeah, poor guy.
You know, and so they kind of grab him and they run away. And then we cut to the soldiers see the robot is fighting that big giant ram monster Godzilla thing, and they're fighting, and the robot actually gets, you know, pounded by the ram thing, and, you know, falls backwards. And they're like, and the ram celebrates, and they're like, oh no, we thought we had it. And then this is where they go, no, look on top of the ram's head. There's a little sort of robot, isn't there? You know,
and that's what the soldiers said. Look on top of the ram head thing.
Yeah,
monster.
That's my script version, sorry. This thing's like, doing all sorts of like, karate.
This is why you end up with scripts with 3 writers on it.
You do.
The first writer says, and then boobs, and it explodes in a blood. And
there's a bloodbath.
Ram head monster thing kill
robot.
A
huge robot.
That's it. That's how they explain it. And then the second,
hey, I'm an ideas man. This is the
editor
idea.
comes in and starts polishing that a little bit.
That's right. If only it was that easy. And you see this little thing, and they say it's Oka. It's the Oka guy that's won the 7 times, and he just stabs the ram monster, in the head, and it, falls to the ground, and they're like, yeah. And anyway, Oka then comes across this creature that's come out of the bloodbath, and it's a Skeletor kind of thing, isn't it? I think at that point, I'm just trying to remember. Pretty sure. Yeah, it is. It's like a
no. It's a muscly skin dude.
No, it's not the muscly spinny dude.
Yeah, because he like chops him in half. He rushes forward with this weird suit that Oka's wearing with great big arms, and there's blades out the elbows. He rushes forward and goes slice, and spins around, and the top half of this naked, bare-chested monster thing flips backwards, but then it sort of coils back up, and he turns around and says, "Haha, you will not get me so easily."
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And so then this monster, it also has blades out his elbows, and they do this spinning Yoda fight thing.
They do. That's right.
You can't keep up with it. And there's just, again, Oka like slashes, and you think, yeah, that's definitely done it. He's done like 1,000 slashes, but they all just heal up.
Yes, and Kato's like, Oka then walks away, and Kato's like, you did it. And he goes, look closely.
Yeah, we've got to...
And in the dust bath, there's this bald man monster appears. And it's like, like he's waiting there. And the bald creature seems to learn. So as they start sort of fighting, he overpowers. And Oka kind of fights him. And the way he's sort of starting to lose the battle against the big one. So then he puts out of his suit that he's wearing, it's like a smoke screen, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it kind of, so the bald man like stabs him and rips him up. But in fact, then as he turns around, that's when Oka is, and he slices and dices.
Yeah, stabs him through and then rips the blade all the way up. Peels in half almost.
Yes.
And drops down, yes.
And then he walks away, and Kato says, oh, is he dead? And he says, no, you've got to catch this one off guard.
Yeah.
And he says it's too risky, we'll do it later. And he just walks away, like into the distance. And he actually gives Kato the sword, which is interesting.
Chucks the sword to him.
Yeah. And Kato's there with rank and that, and they say, don't go near him, it's too risky, all that sort of stuff. But he's like, oh, this is our chance. Like, let's get rid of him. Because at the moment, it's a pool of blood, kind of basically.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I think, okay, what better way of catching him off guard than just run up and keep hacking the body to pieces?
Keep, use that gun on him, just go for it. So they go up, Kato goes up, and as he's almost on top of the body, this ball flies out of the stomach and then just fires an array of red bullets. And Suzuki jumps in front of Kato and says, no, and of course, takes a bullet and
cops a bit.
Basically is dead.
He's not fully dead. He's
not fully dead, but
he's
not
really
in a
bad
good
off.
shape. Yeah.
And again, I think Kato at this point, after a bit of kind of backing off and all the rest of it, says, well, hang on, if we defeat all the monsters in the time limit, we get our injuries healed.
Yeah. Do we also come back to life?
Yeah, you don't come back to life, but you get all your injuries healed.
Yeah.
So if he can kill off this monster fast enough, then Nishi gets his arm back and Suzuki recovers.
Yeah.
And everything will be okay. And that's, Reika says, no, you can't. And he says, but I have to try. The exact same thing as the first dude.
When they finished that, I really liked this transition because then they turn. And of course, the last thing we saw was that ball and the blood. And then there is this giant skeleton kind of creature standing there.
With weird blade things out of his elbows.
Yeah. And Kato runs up and he gets a punch in. And then he's just annihilated onto the ground. And the skeleton says, where's that Oka? He was fun to play with. And he says, well, let's fight. this is Kato, and he's like, no, you wait here, I'll come back and kill you.
Yeah.
So Reiko and Kato decide that, the creature's got the better of them. How do they get the better of him? And then they decide, well, why don't you do a sniper attack? Like, one of us will divert. And Kato says, I'll be the diversion.
Yeah.
You guys get around and be a sniper. And as you said before, it's more about coming together as a team.
Because previously everyone had sat back and waited their turn.
Yeah. And Azu, she tells him then in that moment that actually she likes him and that when it's all over, they should live together. Her son and his brother, they will live together as a foursome.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how that's going to work because if you get your freedom, you have your memory wiped.
Yeah,
so I was unclear as to what they're expecting. But
yes, but
hey,
yes. And then with that, Kato is I think he's trying to head to the location, and the Skeletor guy rocks up, and he's got half of Oka's head and.
That was a nice touch because it would have been easy just to have his severed head, but instead it was the head, and then so it was missing,
ripped off that bit.
Yeah, sort of down through one collarbone and a bit of the top of the shoulder. The other one, it was a jagged, rough sort of thing.
And I really like this because he's got a really long claw, and he just puts it straight to his temple. And you can just tell him he's twice the size of Kato, and he could just probably slice his brain off. Rip open the skull. He's that powerful of a creature. And they just stand there, and he's kind of, he's going to kill him. Skeletor's going to kill him. But he stops him by asking a question, which say, well,
he drops his gun to indicate, and then he says, I have to know, who are you?
What is this about?
Yeah.
And he says, well, this world has many gods.
Yeah. He said something, just before he said something like, a god is something with huge power to destroy or something.
That's right. I think he says, are you a god? And he's like, well, this world has many gods and I am one.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, isn't it? It's like, okay.
Still doesn't kind of quite really explain anything.
No. But, in other films, they do deal with this where, I was trying to think, what was the other show I was watching? And it's, the guy says, they're like, oh, are you a god? And he's like, well, in your world, yeah. Like that, in your understanding, your consciousness, you can think of me like a god. But in fact, he's not a god. And
then, of course, the good old Ghostbusters. If anyone asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
That's right. That's right. Oh, yeah, that was a different show. I won't say that what that show was in case that's a total spoiler. But yeah, there's that concept of like thinking that he was a god. The humans thought he was God, but in fact he's not. So, but anyway. Yeah, so then they instead of just after he said that, then the sniper Ranky attacks. It happens. It gives him a second.
Blasts his arm off.
He blasts
the arm that he had the finger on his head.
That's right.
Gets blown off. Kaboom!
Yeah,
which
kaboom.
Frees Kato to act.
Yeah, and then he does this. They fight with all the weapons, which does pull him down, doesn't it? It really knocks him out.
Him away.
And he starts to lose. He loses also like he's kind of. Some of his weaponry, or
he's looking a bit more skeletal.
Yeah, skeletal. He's like loses his muscles or something, but then he suddenly can have lasers coming out of his eyes.
Yeah,
and he sort of like he fires up where Ranky is sniping, and so part of that building that she's on just kind of collapses. So she comes off the side. It's that classic like hanging on the side of a building.
But then Kato's in there, and so she keeps shooting because she's doesn't want him to die. Says, and this guy, he's now shooting blind, which is ironic because they're eye lasers.
Yeah.
And he's like...
Yeah. It's kind of knocked out his sense or something.
Lasing about the place. And so long as, Regan, so long as Azu keeps shooting, he's kind of shooting just wildly, which gives chance for Kato to sort of get up and get out of the way. And then...
but as he gets out of the way, he gets... the lasers explode kind of a car in front of him or something.
Yeah, well, he runs to grab the sword.
That's right, he runs to get the sword and the lasers blow up a car or something, and it's just his legs are wiped off. He loses both of his legs. So he rolls over, he's like crawling around. He gathers where he's at, and Anzu sees him, and she runs down to save him. And just actually as he's heading towards, I think he's heading towards the gun, isn't he, himself?
Yeah.
There's the gun on the ground. She comes running in, and of course the Skeletor just looks towards her, and the lasers just kind of chop her in half. Yeah,
and we just see a little doll-like face without expression. She's going
Going
but
her body going
Reika's there, and so she's
still firing.
she's
which
shooting,
is good. Which is good.
She's shooting away.
It's exactly what you said they should have been doing earlier, really, because this just proves if one person just keeps shooting, the others have a chance, don't they?
Like if the Osaka team and the Tokyo team had all just like
started firing at
stood
once.
in a semicircle and shot into these monsters, they would have just
got
not
rid of them, I think.
last.
But then all of a sudden, Nishi comes in, doesn't he? He comes in to save the day.
Yeah,
and he stabs the skeleton in it, kind of through him in half. But with that, he gets lasered like through his chest.
Yeah,
something
so
like that.
he's looking grim.
He's
falls
looking
back.
pretty good.
Although he didn't have an arm, so how much more grim can you look when you're in that situation?
But with that, in that time, Kato has managed to crawl to the big gun.
Yeah, the big
and
force drop
thing, and he just manages to. And there's a moment, isn't there, between the two of them? Like he's kind of he starts to head to the eyes.
The red eyes start to glow.
Glow towards him, but he just fires and boom. And then we have the body starting to do that disintegrating thing, lasering thing.
We see
and
Regan
Rank actually
goes,
says, "Oh, we're disappearing." So
Suzuki goes,
but she actually said, "Oh, he actually did it. Like we've made it." And Kato crawls to Anzu. Back at the orb, they're back. Kato's back. Rank is back. Suzuki's back, and he's okay. Ninchi's back. He's got his arm back, But Kato's not back, and they kind of go, "Oh, surely he deserves to come back." And then he does come back. He gets lasered back in. We get on the black orb. They get rated. They get their rankings.
The scores. Reika got 6
Scorpio.
points. And Suzuki got 2 points. And he's like, well.
Better than last time.
And then Nishi goes, score me. I think he got like 12 points or something.
Something like that.
Gives him a total of 34.
And Kato gets 100.
100 points.
Oh, yes.
And he gets his 3 options.
Yes, he does. And he decides to bring Anzu back.
Yes. Well, see, this is an interesting point of the movie because it's the very end of the movie.
Yeah.
And there's some questions I had around it. And in particular was, so Anzu appears there because we don't actually hear his choice.
No,
we see
don't.
Anzu in Osaka. I'm assuming it's Osaka room by herself because the rest of her team's wiped out. So I wasn't clear. I was going, was that because she wasn't quite dead? Like, she's chopped in half, but that suit seemed to keep Nishi with his arm off okay, and Kato had his legs chopped off, but he was dealing with it. Like, it seems like the suit kind of helps you out.
Yeah, still.
So I'm wondering if she was cut in half, but we didn't see the black goo come out. So I was thinking, did she survive? And he's chosen something else. But
I think he did.
I think he brought her back. Yeah.
Anyway, the young Nietzsche is like, his reaction is like, "Oh, this is lame," and he just walks out.
Yeah,
and he's like, "It's like what?" Kato's like, "What? You can just leave?" And they're like,
"Yeah, this totally surprised me." I was like, "What?" I didn't get this in the slightest. But I was like, "Yeah," because he walks out, and then I was like, "Well, why did you do that first one?
Yeah,
why have you done any of these?
Why have you come back to any of them?"
Yeah, and
And we have then this, so Kato runs out, like he runs out of the building himself. But we have then this reveal that it's kind of like a little flashback where Kato is actually, he's gotten 100 points. But it's with the old team. So it's with the guys that died at the start.
Yeah.
And he says he decided to have his memory wiped then.
Yeah.
And the old man said, she says, "Why didn't you tell him that he used to fight with us?" And he says, "Well, every time he risks his life for others, no matter what, it kind of always comes back to that idea." And that's where I really think that idea of hope again is there, because it's like, here's a character that really, no matter what happens, he kind of always is willing to risk his life for someone else. For the greater good.
And I think really it would be the case. The freedom memory. I think you've got to do a fight.
Yes.
And we don't know how long it was between your last fight and this one.
No.
I imagine once that timer starts, I think you're in. And there's also this point, though, these monsters, are the monsters only appearing because Gantz is, people are playing the game?
Yeah.
if everyone just walked away from Gantz, would there be no monsters, or are the monsters there and some people
Gantz
feel
is
they've got to be there
to fight
the monsters, otherwise the monsters get free. So that's kind of, it was interesting, and it brings me to my theory. This is, a fan theory, if you like.
Oh, I know.
Oh no, a theory. My idea of this.
How long do we have tonight?
Not very long. I got to the very end, and I thought to myself, you know what this really reminded me of, and I really thought about, was it seems to be an analogy, or what do you call these things when it's a story, and that's anyway it's actually a story of mental illness.
Okay.
So I'm thinking here we've got this character. It's sort of, they're fighting these monsters.
Yeah.
To get out, they've got to defeat the monsters, or everything's lost. As in you've got to overcome your own personal demons and so forth. And it's his desire to get back to his family and to help other people, which allows him to defeat the monsters.
Yep.
And he's recurring, and so it's kind of that part of the story, I think, is that view of people having something at home, like Anzu's got her child, and so she's out every day fighting monsters, trying to get back to him,
anyway,
getting back to him, and I thought from that point of view, it's quite sort of, you look at the way the monsters are presented and the way it all plays out, and there's definitely that sort of allusion to, I'm trying to think of the correct words for it.
Well, it kind of, I think what you're getting, it's kind of like a myth and a fairy tale, isn't it? It's kind of like, it's the same idea of saying to a little child, like, oh, this little child went out into the woods without their parents and they got eaten by a giant wolf. But it's not really a giant wolf. It's the fact that it could be a pedophile, and the idea there is like coming up with a myth that symbolizes the danger that's out there.
Yeah, but I think this is the symbolization of the personal struggles people have. Yeah.
And even cartoon, like,
to support and supply and help and to get through life. And we've all got a bit of a suit and weapons, and every time you win a victory against these difficulties, you can just forget about it all and go and live a normal life.
You can get better weaponry.
You can be better equipped for when you fight them the next time.
Yeah.
And
you can bring people back from the dead.
And I think that's the opposite of having your memory wiped. You can restore memories or renew relationships, which would have which were lost due to your mental illness. So that's what I think is. I think it's this allegory. Is that the term? Yeah,
that
allegory
is
where you get a story that seems to be about one thing, but it's actually talking about something else. And that's what I got out of this. So if we're talking about my viewing experience,
yes,
that's the feeling I got from it. It's like, I'm not sure when during this film, some point I started thinking. I think it was when Anzu and Kato both revealed they had, someone depending on them.
Yeah, and they do say that, don't they?
And that's why they had to win. They had to get past the monsters.
Well, actually, there is that line when they both reveal that detail. They say, well, neither of us can actually die. Like, it's like, we can't die. Like, we have bigger stakes here than other people. And
I wonder if this is because I've had some depression in my life, but only what you call relatively mild, like passing a day or two type of thing. But I've certainly known people with chronic depression, and I've known people who had a similar experience where one of the reasons they fought against suicidal thoughts or crushing despair is the fact that they really wanted to get back to what they had before. Prior they had relationship and they wanted to get back to
getting back to having
that happy moment. And that's, oddly, whilst feeling as if they're never going to have that again, they're determined to have that again.
Yeah.
And this story, at some point in there, it just sort of struck me as, this could be taken as...
Again, the thematic response.
As a theme about this, And I do know it's quite common in the Japanese anime and manga to have additional themes of, undertones that are more personal in nature.
So does that experience bring it higher up your ladder?
Yes, I loved this movie. I thought it was like... At first, it was kind of like there's just monster after monster, same thing. But yeah, because I started getting a bit
got
more
that
out of
depth
it.
to a symbolic
it's
story.
really
Yeah.
quite nice.
Where is it rolling in on your ladder?
The problem is everything goes to the middle and pushes everything else up and down.
Yeah, that's right.
So it is unfortunately going into the middle.
I don't look at it like that. I always look at my ladder, and I'm going, like where, like the enjoyment, the storytelling, the overall feeling I got, the good things, the really great things. Maybe if some parts didn't quite grab me as much as then in another film that I've got on that we've been watching and collating. So for me, it is right in the middle of this ladder. Just because you've said that, but it is coming in just after The Darkest Dawn. I actually was kind of, when I had it there, I was like, I was a little bit, I like that in The Darkest Dawn. Like I kind of had to debate those two, whereas some of those other films I've got above it, again, it's those kind of like how much enjoyment. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we did Snowpiercer, and for me that came in at like number 3. That just went bam right up to the top.
Yeah,
so again, it's like I'm constantly, like just then going, well, hang on, that film for me did this, and this. This one did this. Yeah, that's about it. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, how many ticks can I give it? But I really enjoyed this, and I think I'm getting what you're saying about the symbolism. I don't think actually any of the films that we've watched, this film just cranked up my kiddie imagination to...
Oh, yeah, that was just...
Oh, like 100% my brain. Like every time I was just like, oh my God, that's another... what the hell are these guys thinking? Like it just... And I loved that about this film. And I always love that when a film does that, where that reveal, the next thing that's coming, you just... you can't imagine it. You can't imagine it quick enough, because then they'll just throw in something else at us that it just really blew my creative imagination away. And I feel like that's a bit hard to do, to be honest. Like, I watch a lot of film, I like to watch the TV, I read a lot of books.
I was trying to imagine,
boom,
how would I come up with a monster design, and like, it's so easy to just be so conventional. You go, it's got some fangs and claws.
Totally.
And stuff, but like this would be like, it's got fangs and claws, but one hand is about 3 times larger, and it's a child's hand
with spikes coming out of it. It's like, what?
It's got a tail, but the tail folds in on itself and has a razor blade that pokes in and out, and it looks a little bit suggestively sexual. For some reason.
But the face is going to look like a puppy dog. All
it's
right?
only got one eye, but that eye has multiple irises. Why not?
Do you know what it's also a bit like? Because I felt like these monsters, it's almost as though they were super creepy, super powerful, but they had deficiencies as well. Like we said before, the giant head, like, how does the giant head get around? Like, he's rolling on himself. He doesn't really have the same aptitude. He's a bit, but then he's like got the power to like beam up and crush someone. So it's like all of the monsters, they're a bit ridiculously not necessarily the strongest. As you said before, like Hollywood, they'll just ramp it up. So instead of a big giant eagle, it's now an eagle, but it's 100 times bigger than an eagle. So of course it's got the big talons and it's got the big beak, but it hunts like a usual eagle. So yeah, it's scary, But in this, it would be like, one of the wings is a hand.
Yeah.
And then it
can only fly in circles.
Yeah, so it can only fly in a constant circle. And then its tail is actually it's got the snake of a mouth, but the mouth doesn't actually do anything.
It screams.
It just screams.
Screams in pain all the time.
All the time. And then it accidentally kind of grabs things as well. So the eagle's kind of forced to keep pulling it back on itself. But if it gets close to you, it's going to rip your head off, So it's kind of like...
It'll pull you apart. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
I found that just so fascinating. And that's why it leads into me. Where is it on your ladder? Sorry.
Yeah, yes.
Pretty much the same, you're saying?
In the spot. Yeah,
so mine's number 13 on the ladder. I've got 28 on that ladder now.
Yeah.
Because then we've got our classics. So that does lead in for me that best scene, which was when that radar went off in Osaka and all of those creatures came out of the woodwork.
And they were all weird.
They were all weird. And as I said before, like, I think my inner child kind of beamed because it felt like it was where the wild things were. It felt like it was creatures that I've kind of seen as a kid but never seen before. And as we were just joking, like, the creatures were just so bizarre. And as you said earlier, I liked how you talked about like the myths and the fables and the, it felt like it kind of came out of that, that world of...
It robbed any sense of predictability.
It did.
If you thought, because I was thinking the opening monster is kind of a demonic looking thing.
Yeah.
And you go, oh yeah,
Zombie,
okay. And then that first woman is that zombie thing, and you kind of go, oh okay.
Yeah, they might just be sort of zombies.
And then there was just this weird menagerie of oddity, and you're just like, okay, I have no clue
where this is going.
This is about, where it's going, or anything. I don't know anything anymore. This is just nonsense.
Yes. And they're obviously not like an army or anything. They're just
not
sort of
coordinated. They're just, who knows what their motivation is.
Yeah.
Actually, I was just going to say, when you're saying just play Darkest Dawn, I read that Drew Casson has just got a new 10-part sci-fi series on Netflix.
Good on him.
Good old Wild Seed Productions has pulled out some money, and there we go. So I'm pretty keen to find out what that's all about.
Yeah, cool. Well, we know he does some good sci-fi. He's into it, so be very interesting. I also really liked the CCTV footage scene of him being stabbed. I just thought that was a really cool stylized way of having the main character killed, without it being such a bloody effect of being... They could have just shown it all, but no, having it through the surveillance footage.
I also like that you got that sense of he was being observed.
That's right. Someone's watching him, which is, I guess, a bit of foreshadowing that maybe that's what the orb Gantz is doing the whole time. Yeah. So I really liked that. Any scene for you, or you want to move on to science?
Look, I really liked those scenes, but I did like the weird old man bit, because all the monsters up till then had been quite sort of gruesome and horror, and they just had that fight where
the big demon
Moira thing just like crushed got squished.
Yes.
And his black goo came out, and then this almost comical looking old man
comes out of
came wandering along, and I was just like, because again, having seen all this other stuff, I'm like, what the hell awful thing is this going to be?
It's got to have something
something horrible is going to happen here. Like his robe's going to open, it's just going to be all teeth or something terrible. So that sense, because I really love those elements. Like you said, the bridge scene at the very start, and the giant ram-headed monster and the mecha. It just, as I said, your imagination is just like, whoa, anything, this is so cool. That's 7 victories. If he wins this one, his 8th, what's his 8th upgrade going to be, for crying out loud?
But the old man, it's again the Matrix, which we know that the Wachowski brothers lent into, Japanese culture and manga and stuff anyway, right, to make the Matrix. Not that is anime or anything, but the Agent Smith is a good example of that, isn't he? Because in the Matrix, it's like you can't kill. Like, the rule is you can't kill an agent. Now that's what Neo has to go through. But the idea is, isn't it like that old man? Like, suddenly it's like, no, he's not a big creepy monster. He's just able to defy the rules of the physics of the game in a way. So you slice him into 4, you're a better swordsman than him. But then he just becomes 4 versions of himself, and then he's trying to slice him up, and he's like faster than anything he can never do. Yeah. And suddenly it's the same as Agent Smith, isn't it? In the Matrix, that you can blow his head off, but then he's there. He can just come back in as another body, and you're exhausted from fighting the first Agent Smith. It's like how do you overcome someone that can break the rules of the game? And that's what it felt like with that little old Japanese man. It suddenly felt like, he doesn't look intimidating like the other guys, but he's going to have something up his sleeve.
And that's what I was waiting for. Is just, and again, I wasn't expecting him to turn to the boob head woman.
It's like, it's the last thing you'd expect is to suffocate in boobs. That's every teenage boy's fantasy. Hello.
Could be worse. A return to simpler times.
I know. And again, manga, and I'll come back to it in a little bit when we get after your science, but I think that's part of manga culture, isn't it? Is that sort of sexualization, that sort of tipping edge of being sexual.
There's like the old tentacles, which are always suggestive, even when they're not actually suggestive. There's still tentacles.
There, they choose those things very, like this. It was a big giant naked woman made out of naked women, like it's some sort of sick fantasy, I think.
Of The Simpsons, where Nelson Muntz drew a picture for Lisa and said, yes, it's it's guns, and that's a jet fighter made out of guns shooting guns. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on that type of science, what science did you want to pick out of this film?
So that it would be interesting to try and figure that. Well, yes, this is a highly scientifically based science fiction. This one.
Yeah.
No, I was really blown away by the graphics, the computer graphics, and in particular because at the moment I am researching my own computer, and what used to be essentially totally impossible and a dream is ray tracing. And ray tracing is just a new technology, or rather an implementation of an old technology. It was originally, I think algorithms were originally brought out in 1962. The ideas or theories behind it was back in the 1600s or something rather, like back when people were looking at eyeballs and stuff. Ray tracing, though, has just recently come into consumer electronics, where they've got application-specific integrated circuits in the graphic processing unit. So they've got, and NVIDIA in particular has their RTX chip, and so this graphics card, it has a bunch of different subsystems. It's a little computer on board a chip itself, so it's got different systems to deal with holding the textures and the images that make up the maps. Another one for doing the mathematics around the three-dimensional geometry, and then there's some other general purpose processing for just really crunching numbers really fast. But then they've introduced a ray tracing circuit, basically, which allows real-time ray tracing. And so you're going to wonder, well, what is ray tracing? If we go back to early efforts of ray tracing, Terminator 2, you've got the liquid metal scenes and the morphing. Not yet ray tracing.
Jurassic Park, is that ray?
No. Very, the Terminator 2 is very close to ray tracing because it has the reflections. But ultimately they had to basically interpolate those reflections from image maps. So he's in that psych ward and he melds up out of the floor, and he goes all metallic and steps through. That took weeks to render on a room full of computers. That sort of graphics now is real time at 100 frames per second on your desktop. But that was trying to emulate what ray tracing does. So ray tracing is modeling the way light works in order to get realistic surface interactions. So typically a lot of shortcuts are taken. And it's called ray casting, which is where you draw a line out from your pixel. So you imagine the screen is a whole bunch of little pixels, little squares. Each one can be a different color. And when you get enough of them all different colors and you step back far enough, they all meld together visually and it makes a picture. So if you imagine mathematically, you in the 3D space, which is modeled mathematically, you trace a ray from the pixel out until it hits something in the world. And then that point that it hits, you say, okay, what color is that point? And that 3D object will have a mapped texture on it. So say it's a boulder, there'll be a picture of a rock, basically, is what you're hitting. And it says that particular pixel is this shade of grey. And then it just draws that. A more sophisticated one then will say, okay, it goes out, here's this shade of grey. What light is hitting it from a light source? So here's a light and it has a strength that diminishes by this much. And so alter the shade of this grey by that much. And then, you got some steps in sophistication regarding, okay, so you've got that. And now what you do is you do a second cast of a ray from there back towards the light. And if it hits something in between it and the light, then put a black pixel there and you make shadows. All of those are kind of approximations. So the proper ray tracing that we're talking about, first used in a commercial film, is Monsters University, which is a strange choice because it's not a realistically rendered scene. So I don't know why they went to that effort, but they did.
I think that's what Pixar did. They kept pushing everything.
There's no point just sitting idle. They'll get taken over. But so what the good ray tracing does now, which is far more accessible and you can do on commercially available home systems. It traces a ray out and it does a reflection or a refraction based on the roughness. So each material will have attributes regarding how rough it is, how reflective it is, how transparent it is, and so forth, as well as what sort of colors it has in those fields. Yep. So you trace this ray from the pixel, it hits there, and it bounces towards each light source that it's going to hit. And then it goes to that light source, finds out the color of the light source, the strength of it, and so it starts combining up a relatively realistic model of how light is affecting it. And the major difference you see in, say, computer games, because that's where the real-time stuff comes in, because the cinematic stuff, they're still not doing it real time.
No, they can render and render.
They're doing the renders.
Yeah.
But it does mean, though, that the artists can work in close to cinematic levels in real time.
Yes.
But in the games, the big difference is when you see a reflection of a water or a shiny surface, in the previous models of 3D rendering where approximations were used, you would only see reflections of what's called screen space objects. Yeah. So if you're sitting there at a corner in a corridor and the floor had a puddle, you would only see reflections of anything that was already on your screen being drawn. You wouldn't see around the corner because you're not tracing light around there. With the ray tracing hardware and full ray tracing on there, the light from around the corner and thus objects from around the corner will appear in the puddle, and you'll get a more realistic. You won't necessarily pick the difference, but it gives you a more realistic view, because as you move, these reflections from things you can't see, like stuff behind you and so forth, start going. And you can bet that this movie was done with a lot of ray tracing. And again, it gives you that very good control of light. And so I had a look at an interview where the director and the cinematographer and so forth were talking about how they came up with this film. And there's an incredible number of effects and lights and changes. And they're talking about when Kato first arrives in Osaka, there's blue and blue misty fog colors. They're saying this is for his anxiety. So they're coloring the world and hiding it. But they wanted to be able to change the lighting, because if you keep it all the same lighting, it becomes very visually boring. And you become numb to it. So they started to introduce street lights and orange glow from advertising and things as they moved in and fought more of the monsters. And you got less of his confusion and more clear in his purpose.
Yeah, right.
But then as the big ram monster came out, the streetlights started getting extinguished by explosions and so forth, and helicopter searchlights started coming in order to cause sharp contrast between dark and light. Yeah. And that sort of use of light and shading and reflections is ray tracing. Yeah. So it's
cool.
It's amazing the computing power behind this, because I'm pricing up a computer $2,500 Australian dollars, so that's what, 23 US dollars.
$23.
we get a little bit screwed over here in Australia when it comes to technology. But for $2,500, you can get a system that will run full ray tracing of light sources and shadows.
Awesome.
At real time. You've got to go on to YouTube and do the search for RTX on. Like, that's sort of the keyword, and you'll find examples of Battlefield 5 and Minecraft. Even you should see Minecraft with the full ray tracing on. It's incredible.
So I mean, that to me just reminds me. There's a TED talk of, I'm pretty sure by memory her name's Danielle Feinberg or Fenberg, something along those lines. But it's a TED talk. And she's a lighting animator at Pixar. And I think the TED Talk's like 2015, and she talks about, it's basically the cinematic the cinematic output of what you're just talking about. Yeah. So it's like she goes back to Finding Nemo, and it's not Monsters University, but I think she starts with Finding Nemo and WALL-E and Brave. Like Finding Nemo is a really good example that she gives a couple of examples of, like, the jellyfish scene it it wasn't working, and she came up with the idea of the way the light would bounce off the jellyfish. So, but she gives the example and then she shows it actually that in their software, she can basically, like the animators design the scene, but then she comes in as the lighting expert and her programming enables it to go, is it morning? Is it noon? Is it afternoon? And the shadows. So they've built a scene, like it could be a forest. The animators have built the forest, but then she comes in and she's got the ability to go, oh, it's morning. What would light look like in the morning? And just, and the light does that. And all the shadows come, depending on the scene they've invented, if it's a forest or a city or underwater. But yeah, she did give the example that, if you're underwater, and they built off real photos that, you're underwater, you get refraction of light, and then you get the ocean moves. Yeah. So the light has to kind of constantly move. And then, of course, if you're in different currents and different oceans, the light will be different. So, but then she did make the point, and this is really important for film and storytelling, is, of course, that's reality. But in storytelling, we can play off the rules of reality to symbolically tell something. So what you were just saying is true, that these guys were like, yeah, we'll put some blue lights in to tell the audience that he's anxious and, he's got some problems. And as the story progresses and he's more confident, we can diminish the blue light and bring in some oranges and hot lights, warm him up.
By that end battle is a lot of red.
Yeah.
Which is because it's highly exciting. There's a lot of passion. Yeah, so it was amazing though to have a look at this graphic capacity, and I keep thinking you can tell the way these things work. So I remember Terminator 2. There's a big deal about the new technology they come up with. Yeah. How they
early 90s
had rooms full of computers churning away for years doing a single scene, and it was just amazing. And then slowly TV ads started having morphing characters on it, and then I remember at some undefinable point I got a demo on my home computer where I could do it. It took a few moments. It would render, but then it would take photos and morph them, and you sort of go, wow, that's where the technology goes. And the Matrix is another good example where they had the slow motion, and then they had the still bullet time, where that was like the amazing. That's what really blew people away in Matrix, where right at the start, Trinity leaps up and it freezes and the camera moves around this 3D scene, and then she suddenly kicks into action. Yeah. And that was mind blowing.
But we need to move on
and then parodies just started playing off all that. and
that's a mix of that computer technology and camera.
And then it's the same that Lord of the Rings brought in similar technologies, and then Avatars played off that. And so on and so forth it goes. So, and now on the desktop, you can get
buy a Windows desktop
stuff that would take weeks to simulate. Now you can do it in real time with greater detail. Yeah, it's like,
as long as you don't have my laptop, sure, you can do it.
Yeah, exactly. My laptop is go back 6 years, it was pretty sweet, but now it's kind of a bit.
Awesome, Ray technology. So I'll talk a little bit. I wanted to talk a little bit on the technicalities, really just with manga. And how that works then in what I have noticed in film. And I mean, the one thing I want to say to begin with is really when you take a comic book, whether it's manga or other, even classic stuff like Spider-Man or whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. Comic books have this style to them where you're kind of, you're in a bit more of the detail of the scene versus when you take a traditional film. But in filmmaking, what they normally do is storyboarding. And so there's a connection between comic books and film because of storyboards. So storyboards are the things that you do first before you go out on location and film a film. Traditionally, storyboards are used. So there is already a connection there. With manga, however, what I've noticed is there's some specific things that stand out to me. And this film had all this. And you see it in the first minute of the film, really. Yeah. And straight away, to me, I do, in my head, coming from my perspective, not being like this huge manga person, which I'm not even being a huge comic book guy or anything like that. I mean, I was when I was a sort of a young teenager. I was into comic books, but grew out of that. But you see it, and straight away to me, like The Matrix comes to mind because it's just, and we've mentioned it a few times tonight already, but it's just suddenly you watched The Matrix and it felt like you weren't watching a Hollywood film. You were watching something pretty surreal and it felt like a comic book. And so you go, how did they make it feel like a comic book? How did they actually do that? Because most films have storyboards that if you look at the storyboards, even Lord of the Rings, you look at the Lord of the Rings storyboard, it looks like a comic book. The film doesn't look like a comic book. So
we talked about Alien. Ridley Scott did a big storyboard,
you can
quite
see
detailed
storyboards. You can, and they do connect. But again, the storyboards can look like a comic book. However, you watch something like The Matrix, and other films have done this. So anyone out there can get on our case. But, of course, other films out there have done it. But it's just like The Matrix, in my mind, is the one that I remember watching and just going, how have they made this look like a comic book? So you watch something like Gantz and you can see like the connection. And so to me, it's like, I'm just going to say what I feel are some of those things that make it. So the first thing is blocking. So it's quite often like, what I mean by blocking is like where you put someone in a shot. And in this type of film, in manga and comic books, they put a lot of things in corners. So it's like really cornerized. So instead of rule of thirds where you put someone on the rule of thirds, which is dividing up your shot into 3x3, which is very traditional filmmaking and photography. In a comic book, you don't. You put them in the extremities of the rule of thirds. And so this film does it. The Matrix does that as well. You also have that real attention to detail. So you have like, not only do you have a close-up of someone's face, but you push it to another extreme, like their eyes or their nose or a corner of their mouth smiling.
And you see the reflection in the eye.
So, and I was just going to say, the other thing is like in that attention to detail, you get shots like you said before, like the cross shot, whereas Kato, as he was disintegrating, he gets both worlds happening, Again, in a traditional film, they probably won't do that. You get the reflection shot heavily used. So it's like, a monster stands in a puddle and the puddle shakes, and you get the reflection of the monster.
Well, this was one of the big things from The Matrix where they pointed out the similarities. They showed, the red pill, blue pill.
Yeah.
And you're looking at close up Morpheus's face.
Yeah.
And you're seeing the pills in the hand in the reflection. Yes. And you're seeing, Neo in the reflection. And that's how you're viewing that one.
That's right. So that's kind of thing, that CCTV shot, that's another thing where it's common. So seeing scenes from an abstract point of view. So instead of seeing it in reality, and again, I know other films can do that, but you have this moment of a bit of sort of distraction from it. Point of view shots are big in manga. And again, in a film like The Matrix and other films that try to play off that comic book style. So here I'm just saying that comic book style. So that point of view. So we see, like you just mentioned it, the Morpheus sunglasses. Here we sort of see things from Kato's point of view or from another character's point of view. We might even see it in a comic book movie like this. We might even see it from the villain's point of view as well, which is quite interesting, like that crossover of the dynamic. We have that moment as well of George and Mildred, as we keep calling him. I didn't call him that. That it's like he's just sitting there and you got the kind of close-up of him smoking in the background, the action's happening.
Yeah.
So we're not even seeing the action. The action is blurred, it's like, what does the filmmaker try to put our attention on is what I'm kind of getting to here. Slow motion, you joked about the Samsung does it, my phone does it. I'm big on doing it with my kids. But yeah, again, I find that happens in these comic book movies, that you have action happening and it's really high tense, like this film's high action, volatile, violent, bloody, swords, guns, heads exploding, all that sort of stuff. And then just moments of slowing down that. Now that's become extremely popular. It's on the Samsung because it has become popular with videographers on DSLRs that, of course, Samsung, Apple, whatever, they go, oh, yeah, well, we'll just put that on as an algorithm. It's just a filter, it's no big deal. We'll just build that into the camera. People like doing that shit? Sure, let's do it. And so we just novices go, I can record that. Oh, wow, that does that, So it's just a way of following that trend. But that trend does come from this style of filmmaking.
Well, and I always find it funny that you have that... and The Matrix, obviously, with its freeze time, is you've got a live action movie, and then someone jumps in action with a sword, and you actually basically get almost a still frame.
You do,
almost like it is a frame from the comic book, and then it'll leap into action, and it gives you first of all, it's cool, isn't it? Because it gives you more of a moment to, it's a hang time.
Appreciate it's hang time,
Oh, look, she's got that sword ready to kill Bill or whatever it is.
It's going to slice him in half.
And it stops there, and then you get that anticipation, and then it happens, and you go, yes!
That's right.
Yeah.
So you're right, hang time, anticipation is it. The other thing is symbols, and I mean, we do find that, and we've mentioned a few of these tonight, it's like we've said a bit of sexualization in the weirdest moments, in violent moments. There can also be either titillating sort of, sex. So, she's wearing such a tight suit, you see everything, but you get it a few moments, like in this film, when Ranki came back from, the Osaka, you didn't get the guys, you got her, and she's on all fours, and it kind of dollies around her whole body as she comes back into her human form, or whatever you want to call it, back into this reality. You got like a real, it's about probably 30 to 40 seconds, pretty good titillating sort of dolly effect of her body, and the opening shot is her ass, like that's what you see first on the big screen. And it was the same with, like you said before, the bouncing boobs. Like we get those moments of titillating sexual, graphic nature. And if you look up manga, there's 5 different types of manga, and there's one that is like for adults. It's got violence and sexual as a huge symbol. And it's not that you necessarily have, and this film doesn't, you don't have hardcore sex in it, but it's just that it's a lot of sort of titillating sex.
Yeah.
There's a bit of an undertone at moments of either nudity or kind of pushing the extremity of, what people might like.
And it's funny, there's very little physical contact between any of the
characters.
characters.
None of them really,
There's a moment where Anzu sort of steps up close and bows her head and says, and we could stay together.
Yeah.
But even then, there's no
like hand holding,
cuddling,
or cuddling,
or
kissing.
Yeah, so
what we do get in a Hollywood.
Yeah.
So they were the things I just wanted to pick on. Conscious of the time, so I want to keep moving. But yeah, they were just the things I wanted to pick on with this film. As I don't know if you call this essentially an anime or if you call it a manga-based anime science fiction film, but yeah, I feel like those moments there. But or whether you call it a comic book style film.
An adult kids movie?
Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, that probably brings us to the end, Surrey, of GantzO. As a thoroughly enjoyable movie. Get your imagination going to a whole new world, I reckon.
Yeah, if you're ever stuck for an imagination,
just watch a film like this.
You watch that and you start going, oh, okay, I'm far too conventional in my thoughts.
No,
I need to start like maybe having some randomized charts to sort of look up different attributes of something.
And I think, again, we mentioned this when we talked to the In Paradox director, Hamid, about aren't we living in such a great point in history that we get to watch global films and stories? I mean, this is what I almost feel like we've been missing this because we've been so westernized. You know, you and I growing up in our era, everything's so either localized or just pretty much from American culture with TV and film. And so you get to watch a film like this instantly these days on something like Netflix or any of the other streaming services. And yeah, I mean, some of this film, there's Japanese culture really embedded in it. There is, isn't there?
And there's bound to be stuff we don't even understand.
You and I are like, and even maybe some of those creatures are folklore, or, you know, there's some sort of connection, or they make more sense to Japanese people. But to you and me, it's just like, oh my God, where the hell did these come from? And like, but there's a part of me, I've got to say, like, wow, I'm just really grateful, and I feel that like it's such a brilliant idea that is there, isn't it?
It's why I love every now and then on like Netflix or whatever, picking like you go like here's a Spanish film. Like we watched an Italian series about witches, like in like the Renaissance time, like as a fantasy sort of show, but it was very different because we're sort of getting a bit sick of these teenager discovers they're the chosen one. And
that's right.
They go, oh wow, I've got powers, and then they say, but I don't want them. Why do I have to have these? And he's like, just
get to the bit
could
that you
someone please just when they discover they've got superpowers, enjoy the fact they have superpowers and not bitch and moan about how they don't want to be different. You're
But
like,
that's the Western way, isn't
It's
it?
like,
So that's
grow
why it's
up.
cool.
Of course
to
you
watch
want to be
something
different.
different. Yeah,
But anyway,
and get these monster
so
heads
yeah,
rolling
watching
along.
these different nationality films, and I remember back when I was in uni, I watched a lot of Hong Kong action,
Yeah.
Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung and Michelle Yeoh.
I won't even tell you what some of the things I watched when I was back at uni.
Well, yes, I watched some documentaries,
Documentaries,
shall we say?
Some European films I really got my hands around, if you know
well,
what I mean.
SBS would have their cult movies on the Saturday nights.
They did.
Great chance. So yes, check out. You hit the foreign bits. There's some Korean films in there. There's great ones. Like check out the Parasite. I haven't seen that one. It's supposed to be very good. Check out some of these Japanese
some
ones.
different voices. That's what
Get
we're
in
trying
there.
to get to here. So, and let us know about our voices. What you thought about our pronunciation tonight. Sorry, you did a great job. I probably was terrible. And you can hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for Space Brains. I mean, come on, people.
Space
If you
Brains
haven't found us
podcast,
now,
yeah.
geez, you'll find us. And we've got a bit of exciting stuff coming up, so stay tuned. There's some interesting episodes to come.
We've got a couple
I'm not going to
special
reveal
episodes.
any secrets, but there's something coming up that's pretty damn exciting. And that's about it, I think.
Yeah.
Bye.
See ya.